Okay, 7 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. Will the reporter please call the roll?
Councilor Roberts?
Here.
Councilor Stinnett?
Here.
Youth Representative? Councilor Savage?
Here.
Councilor Black? Councilor Soulsby? Here. Councilor Urban?
Here.
Mayor Gowan?
Here. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So item 3, there's no items to be added to the agenda. Brings us to item 4, appearances of interested citizens for items not on the agenda. This is a time for citizens to comment on items not listed on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. Individual speakers must be recognized by a presiding officer, provide their name and address, and will be allowed up to 5 minutes or less with council approval. Comments regarding any matter scheduled for public hearing may be provided only in that hearing. Comments on agenda items may be taken prior to council's discussion on that item. Council will not engage in any discussion or make any decision based on public comment at this time. However, the council may take the comments under advisement for discussion and action at a further council meeting. So I have 3 people signed up to speak. Debbie Monsviv.
I'm here just to thank the city of Cottage Grove for their decades-long effort to promote and preserve the history of our town. The projects the city has accomplished with the help of the community, I think, are amazing. From the Centennial Bridge, the Chambers Railroad Bridge, the Armory, the Swinging Bridge, and creating a community center. I'm here to thank you all on behalf of the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society for the efforts that you guys have done to provide a new space within the community center. We were asked to move spaces, and Richard Myers was very accommodating in the very beginning. Faye and Mike have been instrumental in making that space work. Teresa, Jessica, and Deb at the community center have been very helpful and supportive. And I just look forward to the community center getting back to the hub of activity for Cottage Grove. And I just want to thank you all. And I invite you all to stop by and look at our new space and try to spend a little bit of time. Maybe we can help you find something fun about your family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask where exactly that is in the building? It's been a while.
The second door past Police's office.
Okay, thank you.
Charles Snell.
My name is Charles Snell, live at 77242 Circling Hawk Lane. I've lived by Daruna Lake for over 25 years. And during that time, I've watched our water table drop quite a bit. I have a cistern with my well system, and it used to take about 6 hours to fill, and now it's taking about 28. Because of this, I found myself needing to have water purchased and brought up there to supplement our well. I've also found that quite a few of the people around the lake are having the same problem, and in the outskirts, anyone on wells are having the same problem, obviously due to our drought. Costs about $250 per load to deliver, and right now we're looking at about 2 to 4 weeks wait time. So if you aren't prepared for that, you end up having to go to towns to pick up your water. Prior to this situation, I never realized that cities had potable water systems set up for you so you could go and purchase mass amounts of water. Every city from Drain to Bonita, including ours, has some sort of system like that. Eugene has the most automated system. You can go to there and set up a little program. They give you a key, they give you a code, and you can go in there and get your water. You prepay for it using an app, and then you can load as much as you need and go from there. The problem, of course, is that most people, even if they own a truck, can only fill in about 200 gallons of water at a time because of the weight. If you have a car and that's all you've got going, then you're maybe going to get 100 gallons if you want to put a lot of weight in that vehicle. Crestwell has a kind of a basic system. It's really effective, though. They give you a key to their water box, and you can go in there and connect up to their system, and it has a meter on it. You write down your name on a piece of paper, you put the opening meter reading, the end meter reading, and then they bill you once a month. And for most cities, it runs about $2.50 to $5 per 1,000 gallons. So it's really not expensive. It's just getting it to your house that becomes the problem. We have a similar system here, and I think it was $5 per 1,000 gallons or something like that. The problem we have with our system is that there's a $34 charge every time you go, no matter how much you get. So if you're one of the people that's trying to fill up water and put it in a car, you're spending $34 plus the $5 per 1,000 gallons. If you have a truck, maybe it's a little better, but still it's not very worthwhile. It's still cheaper to do it elsewhere. I find myself having to drive to Cresswell to do it just because it makes more sense financially. Apparently what that's for is we need somebody, her name's Rhonda, to come out and open up the gate for us, let us come in, watch us while we load everything, and then close everything back up. It doesn't seem real efficient that way. It would be much better if we could do like the other cities do and just be able to go at any time. The other disadvantage to that, of course, is that we can only go during business hours and not her lunchtime. So if you work a normal 9-to-5 job, there's no chance you can get water in Cottage Grove. And I think that being that it's not a luxury to have water, it's kind of a necessity for every human to have that. I think it's important for our citizens to have access to water, even after work or on the weekends when some people could only be able to go. And the cost at $34 every time you load up just doesn't make sense. It'd be so much easier just to put a meter and a system outside of the gate somewhere that we could have access to. It's not like we have to reinvent the wheel here because we can simply follow what other cities are doing. Cresswell, like I said, is super easy. It's only a matter of giving you a code to the lock and then setting up an account. I like the Eugene system, and if we could go that far, it's really nice because it's all just prepaid, all done online, very simple. But I think it's very important. I really would love for you to consider figuring out how we could get that meter outside or someplace around town where the citizens could come on a Sunday, and when they're in town, it would be convenient to get water for them, rather than putting us at such a situation where we have to pay such a huge amount of money for water, as well as wait 3 or 4 weeks. Okay.
Thank you. The last one I have is Joseph Lipton, that's online, or was online, it still is.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've never commented on made any comments on a city council before, so it's all new to me. My name's Joseph Lipton, 1573 6th Street. This is the first meeting I could attend for a while, but my comments were in regard to Bohemian Mining Days. I was pretty appalled that there was the Breathe Free Lane County booth at the fair. I don't know if this has come up in previous meetings or not, and I don't know if it was a free speech issue that means you couldn't deny their application or something like that. But I found it pretty appalling and disgusting that you had people there, paying a fee and being allowed to preach to the public things that went against public health and public safety. And we're experiencing the Delta variant right now, and things are looking like they may need to shut down again, and these people are going to be hurting the local economy. And there was also a man walking around the first day. I saw him with a giant Holocaust Star of David on his shirt that said unvaccinated. And I think it says a lot about the community that he felt that was acceptable, that he wouldn't go, that would go unchallenged. And I think it's relevant that the city allowed conspiracy theorists and radical people to represent the city at that event. That probably led him to believe that was okay to spread anti-Semitism just in public like that. And yeah, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 5 is public hearings. This evening we have a public hearing on an ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Municipal Code Title 1-4 Development Code self-service storage amendments. City Council will make a final decision upon the ordinance based On the complete record, including the Planning Commission's recommendation, testimony received at tonight's public hearing. The proceedings are to be held virtually and will be recorded. For anyone wishing to speak, if you are accessing the meeting using video, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. If you are accessing the meeting using only audio, please announce you would like to speak. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair, must provide your name and your address for public record. We ask each speaker to limit themselves to no more than 3 minutes. Please remember that all presentations will be timed. You will be informed when your allotted time is expired. All speakers exceeding the time limit will be asked by the chair to immediately conclude his or her remarks. If you do not finish your presentation, be sure to provide a copy of your statement to staff. Written testimony may also be offered and will be considered and made part of that record. In order to minimize repetitive testimony, organizations are encouraged to only one speaker speak for the group. Each person may testify only once unless called upon at the request of council member to respond to question. Thank you for your cooperation. Before we begin, does any councilor wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest in the matter? Okay. With that, we will open the public hearing. May we please have staff give a report?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilors, this application before you is an ordinance that the Planning Commission heard at public hearings in April and in June and made a recommendation for approval to you for tonight to hold a public hearing and hopefully adopt. The ordinance is to amend the Cottage Grove Development Code, Chapter 14, to address a couple of issues that we have discovered regarding self-service storage. It's currently identified as a commercial use in Chapter 1 of the Development Code, but then later on is only identified as an allowed use within our industrial land use zone. We are recommending at this time that we change its land use category to being commercial, from commercial to industrial. So we are modifying that to reflect where it actually lives within our zoning later on in the document, and also add as the self-service storage as a conditional use in the C2P community commercial zone. So the two changes before you are to change the land use definition category for self-service storage from commercial to industrial, and then to add self-service storage as a conditional use in the C2P zone.
Do any councilors have questions of staff? Seeing none, we wish to hear from everyone who is interested in this proposal. Please remember to state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Brings us to item B. This evening we have a public hearing on an ordinance amending Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan Land Use Diagram Map and Title 1-4 Land Use District Map. City Council will make a final decision upon the ordinance based on the complete record, including Planning Commission's recommendation and testimony received in tonight's public hearing. These proceedings are being held virtually and will be recorded. For anyone wishing to speak, if you are accessing the meeting using video, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. If you're accessing the meeting using only audio, please announce you would like to speak. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair. You must state your name and address for public record. We ask each speaker limit themselves to no more than 3 minutes. Please remember all presentations will be timed. You will be informed when your allotted time is expired. All speakers exceeding the time limit will be asked by the chair to immediately conclude his or her remarks. If you do not finish your presentation, be sure to provide a copy of your statement to staff. Written testimony may be offered and will be considered and made part of the record. In order to minimize repetitive testimony, organizations are encouraged to have only one person speak for the group. Each person may testify only once unless called upon at request of the City Council member to respond to a question. Thank you for cooperation. Before we begin, does any councilor wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest in the matter? Seeing none, I will now open the public hearing for comprehensive plan and land use diagram map in Title 1-4. May staff please give their report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councilors. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive public comment regarding the application MCPA 2-21, a request by the Stout Living Trust to amend the City of Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan and change the land use district map. If approved, this ordinance will amend the comprehensive plan designations for map number 20-03-28-12, tax lots 3400, 3402, and 3403 from C, community commercial, to M, medium density residential, and will apply the R2 multifamily residential zoning designation to tax lot 3403. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on June 16th and recommended approval of the ordinance to council. At this time, it is appropriate that council hold the public hearing on the ordinance. This ordinance has been available for more than 1 week, and staff is recommending adoption. Thank you.
Do any councilors have any questions of staff? Seeing none, we wish to hear from everyone who is interested in this proposal. Please remember to state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one wanting to speak, we'll close the public hearing. Brings us to item 6, consent agenda.
Move approval.
We have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item 7, resolution and ordinances. First vote for ordinance amending Cottage Grove Municipal Code Title 1-4 Development Code Self-Service Storage Amendments. Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor. So you have held a public hearing for this ordinance. This is again regarding the self-service storage and its place within our development code and its accessibility as a conditional use permit in the C2P zone. At this point, it is appropriate for you to consider the ordinance. The ordinance has been available for more than 1 week prior to this meeting, and staff is recommending adoption.
Do we have an ordinance number?
3143.
Councilor Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recommend that we adopt ordinance 3143. Yes.
Thank you. We have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Roberts.
Aye.
Counselor Stinnett.
Aye.
Counselor Savage.
Aye.
Counselor Soulsby. Aye. Counselor Urban.
Aye.
Mayor Gowing.
Aye. Okay, item B is first vote for ordinance amending Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan Land Use Diagram Map and Title 1-4. Mr. Mongan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council has held a public hearing on the proposed amendment to the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan Land Use Map and Land Use District Map to apply M, medium density residential, to tax lots 3400, 3402, and 3403, and to apply the R2 multifamily residential to tax lot 3403, all lots owned by the Stout Living Trust. The Planning Commission held a public hearing for the attached ordinance on June 16th, 2021, and recommended approval to council. At this time, it is appropriate for council to consider the ordinance. This ordinance has been available for more than 1 week prior to this meeting, and staff is recommending adoption. After council deliberation, it is recommended that the City Council hold the first vote on the attached ordinance. This ordinance was prepared and has been available for at least 1 week prior to this meeting. This ordinance could be adopted in 1 week.
Councilor Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the council adopt ordinance 3144.
A motion with a second. Is there any discussion? Councilor Stinnett.
It's appropriate to ask about the historic preservation overlay district. Is that something that could be of concern going forward, based on the barn that is no longer there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Stinnett. This application does not affect that historic overlay, Goal 5 item on the statewide land use goals. So going forward with the subsequent application by whoever the property owner may be, whether it's the Stout Living Trust or a new owner, they would still have to comply with those overlay requirements with whatever that development may look like.
Those aren't our requirements. The overlay requirement.
The overlay is a function of the development code. So,
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Roberts,
aye.
Counselor Stinnett,
Aye.
Counselor Savage,
Aye.
Counselor Soulsby, Counselor Irvin,
Aye.
Mayor Gowdy.
Aye. Okay, item C is a first vote for ordinance amending chapter 12.16 of the Cottage Grove Municipal Code, adopting a new section 12.16.045 alley naming. Mr. Brasby.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening. Recently, the city received a request to name an alley from Darby Valley at 35 South 6th Street. He has added a space in the back of his building, and he wanted deliveries not to come through his primary business. We've talked to him, and it was suggested that we go through the process of naming the alley that he has access to. In our conversation, Mr. Valley suggested Band Alley from the movie Animal House, as well as, and forgive me, I may pronounce it wrong, Diagon Alley, which represents the marketplace in the Harry Potter series. In 2020, I came to this council requesting another issue of naming an alley. We did this under the non-conforming section of street naming. With that proposal and motion from council, they accepted South Fifth Alley, and they gave staff direction to come back with guidelines for naming alleys versus streets. And so before you for consideration is staff's proposal for naming the alley. We used the basis of our street naming, which is Main Street is the basis for east-west, or anything north of Main Street is north, anything south of Main is south, and then the river is east and west division line. Thanks to Mr. Boone, he gave me a really good, easy explanation to explain this. Whatever alley you are in, you face, if it's a north-south alley, you face the river, and the street directly in front of you is the way to name the street. If an alley is east-west, you face Main Street, and the alley going to Main Street is the name of the alley. What is special about, I guess, there's two special cases here. We can have alleys next to the river, and so we could have an east alley, west alley, both north and south. So in this proposal, we've asked that like River Alley would be, or Coast Fork, excuse me, I'll look at my notes there, Coast Fork Alley, and then we would give direction based on north, south, east, west, or south Coast Fork Alley, west, because it's on the west side of the river. Main Street is the other unique one in that on three sides right now I know of, we could have three main alleys in the three quadrants of town. And again, we've used the direction for North Main Street Alley, or North Main Alley, excuse me, west and east, and then we will have a South Main Alley east. There's also a non-conforming section in this code, and instead of going through the long engineering way of logic to explain how I wrote this, I'm going to save you that time. If you have any questions, please ask.
Since we have representation from the police and fire in here, I'd like to hear their opinion on that, since they would be the ones responding, and if they would. Could you step up, please? Thank you. I like putting you guys on the spot.
Danny Soulsby, 15 South 6, South Lake County Fire Marshal. the more weird things we get, we have a lot of those right now we're trying to clean up. It makes it hard for dispatching people to those addresses. And if you did between 5th and 6th, name that alley goes all the way from 5th to 99. So is that going to be one name the whole way, or are we going to split that up with different names? So that's something to think about too, and then getting people driving through their deliveries. If delivery trucks are thinking that they're going to deliver to that address, that isn't going to happen because you can't get to that. You can barely get a single car through there because of the dumpsters and the gas meters and the power poles and stuff. So is all the other avenues been checked on how to get his deliveries without having to do something like this? That'd be my question for Darby, but that's my 2 cents.
Conrad Gagner, I'm with the police department. I can't really think of any difficulty. It sounds a little confusing just hearing it for the first time. I mean, if we saw it on paper or something like that, we might be able to figure it out a little better. But it sounds, the reason why it's confusing to me is it sounds long, North Main Alley East. It's hard to conceptualize, I guess, but I mean, it'd be a learning process. But frankly, I can't think of any better way than what was suggested by Mr. Bradsby. And we just figure it out. Mr. Myers?
And to answer Fire Marshal's question, outline along that alley, we have just like addresses on streets. So between 5th and 6th, it would be 500 block up to 6th. So you'd be able to go to the next block. The other reason we put alley in the name is now.
Mr. Bradsby?
Officer Gagner was not present at staff meeting. So at staff meeting, Scott Shepard, police chief, mentioned that in the dispatch system, you would be able to put in landmarks so you could know when to stop before. That's what I remember, that way that when they got dispatched to the alley, they would know certain landmarks to turn off to. To Fire Chief, Fire Marshal Soulsby's question, we did look at different options. I talked to the police chief as well as Mr. Soulsby. The first proposal was 35 South 6 rear and front, and that didn't seem kosher to me or the emergency services at that time. They didn't want a front and rear. We suggested suites. The property owner didn't want that. So the only way to make, in this case, for Mr. Valley unique, so he could have separate delivery, would be addressing or naming the alley.
I think we definitely need a standard on it just to follow for further. Mr. Soulsby?
Yes, the new office space, I understand, is something to do with OLCC. So. Yes, sir. No, that's fine. Well, I understood he applied for a permit. It's been final, and there was a separation wall, as far as I understand, through the building department.
Okay, so that's a separate subject though, because we're on, the task we got is to name the alley. I understand. Yeah. Any discussion from council? Councilor Urban?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I'm listening to this, and we went through it on Friday, one of the arguments of having them be the names be standardized, because that's what I understand we're actually voting on, is whether or not to implement a standardization methodology for naming alleys, was that it would be difficult to find or remember a name that was non-standardized when delivering or dispatching emergency services. I guess I'm wondering how true that is. In the days of Thomas Brothers, I could see that being more applicable, but the way that just anecdotally I navigate it is pretty irrelevant. And I'm just wondering how relevant that is. Maybe hearing about that from people other than myself as to whether or not we really need to adopt a, I think South River Northwest or whatever the name might be a little more confusing than say Band Alley once you log it in. So I guess I'd like to hear more about the justification for this naming convention.
Councilor Soulsby.
I do agree with Councilor Urban. For the average citizen, those names are going to be easier for them to remember. But in emergency services, they're going to be looking for a map.
Councilor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo that. I think we should do what's best for public safety.
Councilor Stinnett.
I would tend to agree, and I would wonder the next step of us deciding on a convention for naming our alleys. How does that translate to dispatch? How do we enter that in a system that allows us to navigate these alleys? And I mean, I don't always rely on what I know about Cottage Road to find an address. Sometimes I put it in the system that gives me that address immediately. How do we? What's the next step there if that's not a goofy question?
I'm going to take a stab. I may not have it all, so you guys, I'm going to invite you to come up and help me. Councilman Urban, the city or staff thought that, how do we get traffic to the proper area in delivery or just the general public to find it? And so in getting to the neighborhoods, if we didn't standardize it, say similar to our street system, we could have, i.e., Harry Potter phrases or Disneyland characters or something like that. But again, not everyone has GPS, and I don't know how often the maps are updated. So the goal here was to use something that people are similar with or familiar with. First Street, Second Street. Again, we use the alley. Again, the special case is the first ones off our main baseline, which is Main Street and Coastwork of the River. After that, it becomes basically a non-issue as far as the length of the name. As far as dispatch, again, my limited understanding is, again, according to police chief, they are able to put in landmarks to dispatch. So if they got dispatched to the one I know of, 1328 South Fifth Alley, they would somehow mark South Fifth Alley as city manager Myers stated, they would know that 1300 block is between Taylor and Fillmore. And then they would respond. Other than that, I don't know how to answer your question.
So it would be difficult to simply overlay this standard for dispatch purposes.
Well, again, when we name the street, it'll get notification. I don't know how dispatch gets their name, but it goes through Lane County and Lane County GIS and RLID and various organizations get notified that we've named the street or an alley, in this case, a certain name, because we have a lot of unnamed alleys that currently aren't addressed or named either.
Mr. Stewart.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Stinnett,
So one of the processes in our building function is that when somebody applies for an application, and let's say they're building an apartment, or in this instance, they've created a space and their address is on the alley, they request an address. They're given an address by the city engineer. And then in our office at the present time, Melanie Clemmer, she notifies all the police department, the fire department of that address and the location of the address. I assume at that point, Lane County, Arlette, all the various different places update their maps to show that address. And so it's plugged into their system at that point.
So we can expect to plug in a great many new addresses into this.
Not only when they're applied for and they're granted. So it's not like there's, I mean, in this instance, I've been here 4 years. This is the second request for address off an alley. The first one is Mr. Brasby noted, was on the alleyway between 5th and 6th, 4th and 5th Street, or 6th Street there, south of town. And that was for a duplex. So that address was granted to him on the council approved the naming of the alley. And then once the address was granted and given by Mr. Brasby, then it was all the appropriate agencies were notified of that address. So this is only the second address. It's not like there's going to be several thousand addresses issued here.
So we're not creating addresses by name.
So if we adopt this ordinance, would we, then every alley that's already developed will have a name?
I don't believe so. I think if you adopt this ordinance, you've given direction to staff on how to name future alleys. The only alley that would come back to you would be a non-conforming alley, which means that it's not going north-south or east-west, it's going diagonal. And that name would be unique. Again, that's similar in our street naming system. We have street naming is codified, the northeast quadrant is by governors, the northwest quadrant's trees, the southwest quadrant is famous people, the southeast quadrant is named after presidents for the east-west streets. Everything east or west of the river is alphabet.
Right, but every alley we have is already there right now. And
Correct,
so
it's
would we go
platted.
ahead and would this then blanket that would be what they would be? Because if we adopt this ordinance, we shouldn't just be addressing a business going in because they need a physical address. That alley should be named that alley.
Correct. I see what you're saying. Yes.
So this would be north behind Jack Spratt's would be
North Main Alley.
North Main East.
North Main Alley East, yes. Huh? Oh. Okay, yes, sir.
It's named after the street that is parallel to it, so it's parallel to East Main. We got East Main Street next to East Main Alley. And because East Main because it's a baseline, that's a special case of so to separate those two East Main Alley, East Main Alley, the north side of the thing, and East Main Alley, the south side.
It's what I wrote is slightly different. It's north of Main, south of Main, east of the river, west of the river. So it'd be North Main Alley East, which means the quadrant here, Jack Spratt's, South Main Alley East would be between here and Washington. North Main Alley West is between Main and Ash. Is the way I wrote it. Jake knows.
So the one behind Tapateo would be Whitaker northeast.
Just north, because parallel streets or avenues change names. The only ones that's going to have the east-west on them are the named after the baseline, which is the
Okay, so it'd be Whitaker North.
Yeah, so it'd be North Whitaker Alley, North Gibbs Alley. Well, by our definition of our code, it's north. Because, yes, it could be. By our code, it should be correct. We don't need a direction on that. But yes, we could do that.
Councilor Irvin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is part of what I'm responding to. Like, I wonder, and maybe when it's established, it won't be, but just this, you have like 3 layers of directional guidance in these names. And first, our emergency services, are they not generally trained in the maps, and are they not local? How often are we seeing responses come from out of this area? And I remember growing up with, firefighters, they had to study every single one of those and pass every one. I don't know if the standards are the same, knowing every street. So regardless of what it's named, you would have to know it. I mean, otherwise we ought to be renaming every street in here so that it's just logical, street and alley. But if we're not really doing that, are we really accomplishing anything useful by stipulating that it has to be these names? Open question.
Mr. Boone?
You could always.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. You could, if you wanted to, you could pass this mostly as it stands, and you could leave out the 2 river alleys and the 2 main alleys and make them non-conforming as well, because to avoid the double naming. And then you could name those alleys individually outside the naming scheme. So that way, if you're, you still can go down the street and in order you would see things like South 5th Street, then South 5th Alley, then South 6th Street, South 6th Alley. You still have all of that. But as I'm hearing the conversation, I'm getting the sense that it's the double alley names that are the kind of the issue with this. And so you could just say those are also non-conforming, and you could come up with your own names for them if you wanted.
Councilor Savage?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jake, you just said exactly what was on my mind. I see the logic of creating a naming system that is logical and allows you to very reasonably figure out where to go. That makes sense to me. But seeing the conversation both Friday and tonight, it is very confusing. But to take out the confusing part would just be those first couple of alleys. And I like what you just said, so I really appreciate you for saying that. I'm more comfortable with that because that makes sense going further south, further north, further east, and further west. But that still doesn't name the alley in question. But I love the idea, if I may put in my 2 cents, I love the idea of bringing some of our local history into this town. I said it on Friday and I'll say it again. I love the idea of Band Alley because that's something historic to our town because it references Animal House. We can look at different names that involve Buster Keaton's The General. Those kind of things I think are going to be fascinating for travelers coming in. I think they're going to be easy for folks to find. If it's just a couple of non-conforming alleys that we can specifically name, I think this scenario of naming alleys going further out would work. And that's my 2 cents.
Mr. Soulsby, go ahead.
Clarify a couple things. Danny Soulsby, South Lane Fire. So the county will get the new addresses, any addresses given to them, and they'll send that to us. We get a notice of that. Firecom they'll give us cross streets. So if it is the alley between 5th and 6th, they're going to say between 5th and 6th Street off of Main, south of Main. I do appreciate the history and naming things history, but on the other hand, I've been responding for 40 years with the South Lane, and there are streets that the name will come up, and I was like, the heck, it's not a president, it's not a tree. And so I don't know which way to go. I know that's one of those little cul-de-sacs, but I'm not sure which side of town it's on. But if it was always Main, even south of Main, it's going to get us in the right area. We're going to know it's downtown. And for mutual aid, we do get mutual aid responses. So Drain responds, Goshen responds, Eugene responds. And so given an address that they could figure out from the name is always good, because if dispatch is down, worst case scenario, you're just given an address over your phone and you got to try to find it and look it up. I'm just saying, I think it's easier if we went with standard on all of them. That's my 2 cents.
I just wonder why we can't go with bringing it the other way. So this alley we're talking about would be Washington Alley, and the one behind Flower Basket would be Adams Alley, and then this alley over here would be Whitaker, and the one behind Tapatio would be Gibbs, and you just go the other way, leave Main Street out of it as your baseline, but work it the other way. It'd be a simpler, I think.
I think the number 5, Washington.
Mr. Boone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so you know, as we were working on this, it was to try to keep it also in line with the alley that was previously named South Fifth Alley. So doing it that way would simplify the Main Street issue immensely, but it would then either the existing South Fifth Alley would have to change name or just kind of hang out there as a non-standard, because it would go the other direction from Fifth Street. So that's why that was the thinking.
Mr. Mayor and Council, we're just talking, I'm reviewing the house plans, so I guess if he hasn't officially been addressed on South Fifth Alley, even though we've done it by a formal action, but I'm just saying there's no formal addressing on it, so we could obviously with this ordinance we overwrite previous action by the council and go your direction, which is fine. I have to rewrite it, but that's fine. It's an easier way to explain, yes.
Councilor Urban, and then.
So I don't know if this would be a motion, but because it's not to adopt, but I guess I'm in support of your idea. Change that other name, make it simple, and I guess staff to come back with a revised ordinance that we can vote on.
Do we need to bring it back, or could we make a change here?
I think this is so specific.
Councilor Stanton.
I just wondered if you might restate that so that I know exactly what change we're proposing.
What I think would be leave Main out of it, and then you would go from there. So whatever, if you were walking south, whatever the cross street, the next one, the first one is Washington. That alley would be Washington Alley. The next one would be Adams, on down, and then this way would be Whitaker, Gibbs.
And basically, we're taking the baseline, as the mayor said, we're taking the baselines out of consideration so they won't be duplicated. You know, like I said, we have alleys north and south of Main Street, east of the river, north and north side of Main Street. So you would be taking that out of the equation because all 4 quadrants are named different. The southeast side is President's.
So the one behind the American Legion would be the Ash Alley.
Would be Ash Alley, yes, sir.
So basically, she looked at your second page, the first sentence of 1 technology for the of me, the first public street, then we get rid of the whole bit for things
Seems a bit more intuitive to me, so I'd like to see it written up. I'd support that.
Okay. That direction?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, everyone, for your input.
Okay, item D is a resolution placing liens on specific properties as a result of nuisance abatement. Mr. Mongan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. As part of the city's nuisance abatement program, the city may have to abate nuisances and assess the property for the cost of abatement. If the property owner does not pay the assessment within 30 days, the city places a lien on the property. The attached resolution places liens on the 5 properties resulting from nuisance abatements performed by the city. The 5 abated properties are all owned by a limited liability company known as Silk Creek Commons out of San Luis Obispo, California. The property owner was notified by first-class mail and direct posting on the properties that a nuisance was declared, and they were required to abate it. When that date passed with no contact or action by the owner, the city abated the property using city crews. The abatement followed the issuance of administrative warrants. The cost of each abatement is shown in the resolution. The property owners were sent a notice of assessment, including an invoice for the abatement by certified, first-class mail, and United Postal Service. The total amount was due within 30 days from the date of the assessment letter. The 30 days has passed, and no payment has been made. It is now appropriate for council to consider a resolution to place a lien against the properties. Staff recommends the resolution be adopted.
We have a number. Councilor Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Recommend that the council adopt resolution 2054.
Second.
A motion with a second. Is there any discussion? Will the reporter please call the roll?
Hey, yay.
Aye.
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 Aye. All right, business from the city council. Item A is a council subcommittee appointment for planning commission interviews. Mr. Mongan.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Chloe Beckus, a 2-term appointee to the Cottage Grove Planning Commission, has advised staff that she has moved out of the area. Per Cottage Grove Municipal Code Section 2.24.020, membership, no commissioner shall reside outside of a 6-mile radius of the city limits. Chloe's moving to Newport has therefore created a vacancy on the Planning Commission. This vacant position is for a term of 3 years and will expire on December 31st, 2023. This position has been advertised in the Cottage Grove Sentinel and the city's website. The recruitment closes for applications on August 13th, 2021. The council is being asked to appoint an interview subcommittee to interview applicants applying to the Planning Commission. Staff will return to City Council with the interview subcommittee recommendations on August 23rd, 2021. Staff recommends City Council appoint a subcommittee to interview the applicants for applying for the Planning Commission.
I know Council President Fleck texted me and said he wants to be on there. Councilor Roberts. Councilor Soulsby. Councilor Soulsby, you can share it.
There you go. May I make a statement?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank Chloe Beckus for her years of service to the community in the city of Cottage Grove.
Do we have applicants? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's open till Friday, I believe.
Okay, great.
Concerns of council. Councilor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Stewart, I got some letters about the tree for the stop sign 6th and Taylor heading south. We moved the stop sign to the other side of the street, and there's a tree now that's 2 houses down that's really blocking that sign. And some neighbors there was wondering if we could have that tree trimmed. Or is that can you notify the people that own the tree? What's the?
Yeah, I'll just ask staff to address it. It's something that we can ask the public, but where we have street signs that are blocking and they need to be done in a timely manner, I'll just ask staff to go trim.
And there's a mailbox on 8th Street by the pool that I've been asked if the curb could be yellowed. It is not yellowed, and there's an elderly lady who says there is a van that parks in front of the box and she cannot get to her mail via her walker. Just bringing that up. I don't know what the rules are with that.
Might ask Mr. Bradsby address that.
Thank you, Ron. We have done this in the past. It's usually not been for a single mailbox. It's been like for the community mailboxes.
It's one of those big ones, yeah.
Yeah, and we've done that. Usually we get those requests from the postmaster. In the past, we've had contractors paint yellow curb, but now public works staff can do it. So if given direction, yes, we can. We've allowed that kind of thing to happen.
Thank you for the info. Two more things real quick. The Buster Keaton mural is going to be completed in 2 days. I want to thank Richard Myers and Faye Stewart for their help getting that done, and I especially want to thank Amanda Ferguson for your work with Lloyd Williams and the Historical Society on the grant. It was a huge part of getting it done. I want to thank Connie Houston for her continued work in this heat. I don't know how she does it. There'll be a ribbon cutting for the mural with the dam finals, 11:30 Saturday morning. And then after that, Saturday night, I get to do something that I've always wanted to do in this community, and that's show a movie in the Chambers Railroad Bridge. We'll be showing the general inside the railroad bridge, and I did a test about 2 weeks ago. It's absolutely wonderful to sit in there and watch a movie. And last but not least, the chamber dinner. Absolutely wonderful the other night. The focus on the fact that that meal was put together using several small farms in our area was brilliant. I mean, it's nice to help a local restaurant with a cater like that, but to be able to put the eye on our local farms and put that together, that meal was off the hook. Very well done. And I just wanted to publicly say that. I wish I had a plate of that right now. It was that good. So hats off to the chamber and what they did there with Sean and everybody else. It's very well done. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Councilor Urban?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to give an update report on the Lane Economic Development meeting today. So we had presentations from the Cascade West Economic Development District with the progress report of the document, the SEDS document. That's going to start to be implemented by way of breakout work groups that are going to take each of the goals that have been identified in that document. And so those will be coming up. I think they're scheduled right now. And I have the intention of being part of those as well to try to do more with that document than has been done in the past. We also had Carrie Westland give a presentation from Travel Lane County, giving kind of the high level overview of that is automotive travel is past currently 2019 levels. A lot of other metrics in terms of measuring the tourism in the area are still down, but those are up, and there's a lot of things on the horizon, a lot of events, a lot of kind of new concepts and services going to be brought to bear to coincide with a lot of the new facilities that are coming up. One of the events that's going to be this month is the Prefontaine Classic, which she was touting as this will be one of the earliest or first times that these athletes will be competing in kind of a live gathering with spectators. The tickets are on sale, and so that might be something you want to check out. I think it's August 22nd. And there's also kind of a lot of this was in preparation for Oregon 22, the World Athletics, but one of the ideas that had been thrown around that's now becoming a reality are organized floats on the McKenzie and parts of the Willamette as well, including cheese, assuming crackers. And so that'll be available for people here as well as kind of targeted at people coming to visit. So Carrie would be a great person to get in contact with any blossoming ideas that might benefit our area. And then the travel lane website is at Eugene Cascades, Coast Cascades or something like that. That'd be worth checking out. I think they have a calendar that stays pretty up to date on all of that. Yeah, I guess there's a couple of others. So next meeting, I should be able to give a report on the Lane County workforce, and then those breakout sessions on the SWEPS board.
Thanks. Councilor Silsby.
I just needed a little guidance because I've been doing a little thinking on this, that I am the advisor for the Chamber of Commerce, and that made a lot of sense when I was on the board. And I'm wondering if I would be better served letting Chalice, since she's on the board, take on that position, and maybe there be some sort of trade, and I take another committee off of you. Just, I'm happy to stay on as an advisor to Chamber, but also I was on EBID Main Street now that that's combined, and it's now downtown, and John is heading that up, and so I just wanted to put that out there that I am willing to trade. I'm happy to stay on whatever's the best way I can serve.
Those can be switched, correct? Because those are, we don't have to vote like the vision keepers would be. Yeah, and I believe like on Chamber, we're each other's alternate.
Right. So we might just want to, I don't know.
Is that okay with you, or?
It would just mean that you're doing the reports back and you're heading it up, and so you may be the appropriate person to do that, or is that a conflict? That's what I'm not sure.
Someone died there.
He's been hired by the board to deal with
Okay, so I can stay on as that one for sure.
Okay. Any other? Councilor Stannett?
I don't know if it's appropriate or not to address, was it Mr. Snell? His concern with regard to the water system. It sounds like it might be worth exploring streamlining that system for people that clearly need it. I don't know if there's an update to provide on that, or if we can get into it at this point. Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Councilor Roberts.
Thank you, sir. That's Richard. Thank you for that. And hearing that, that's good news. I have two friends that are having a different flow problem with their well lately, since and we're not sure how long this drought is going to last. So I think that's great that we're looking into that for our citizens. Thank you.
It's not as easy as the line is not being safe. Acre dropping on water.
Councilor Silsby.
Mr. Mayor, is there a way to alleviate the fees every time? Is it possible to do a one-time fee?
That's up to you. You can do that.
If I might, Mr. Mayor. So presently, there's each time somebody comes in and fills up, there's a $30 fee just to come in and fill up. And then they're charged by the gallon. If they live within, by the 1,000 gallons, if they live within city limits, it's $1.77 a thousand. If they live outside, it's $2.65. We set the $30 fee because we have to make sure that folks are let in, let out, as was explained. And there's our time, our staff time to do it. The other thing that's not factored in is that we felt that it was important that each of these users pay for the cost of the operation of the debt service on the plant, just as our citizens pay a monthly fee for debt service. We felt it was important that the debt service would be included in these fees too. Most of the people that come in live outside the city limits, certainly paying the higher price, but we need to make sure that it's fair to our citizens inside the city limits, that they're, that everybody's treated equally in the cost of the water they purchase.
Councilor Savage?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank you, Mr. Myers, for putting together the treatment facility tours, the water treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant, and then the one that I missed, which I want to go on. They are phenomenal. I learn something different every single time. I've been a number of times just this year alone and have received so much different, not different information, but I learned something different every single time. It's just fascinating. There's so many different components that go into why we have the water we have, how we clean our wastewater. It's just astounding, and I really appreciate that you have done this. So thank you so much.
And I just want to just touch on what I talked about Friday. Just remind everybody, work on your professionalism, since we're back meeting personally to address people by, staff by the proper terms and each other. And one other thing that I'd forgot about was they suggested at the mayor's conference is sit down and have one-on-ones with each counselor throughout the month. And so I'll be reaching out to each of you to allow some time to sit down and just catch up and figure out what we need to do to move forward. So with that, we will move on then. Business from the city manager.
Yeah, just to let you know, and we sent out notices to people that have signed up for the next tour set. The next year we are postponing this Thursday's tour to a week back, since it's supposed to be anywhere between 104 and 107 on Thursday. Other things that we started, we were planning for thinking canopies, but that just gives you out the sun and still be 107 or 104. So we'll wait and move that back a week. What that'll do is it'll push the next set of tours back 1 week. So on the schedule, we'll start a week later. On the final tour, the water plant, then do the mayor's tour as well. Start this, we'll have 2 tours on one night, the 2 groups, and so it splits that up. This group will go to the wastewater plant, so it can still end by the 16th. So we'll be doing that. I do want to comment on Mr. John, but BFD is not a city function, and we will commit BFD to run their festival and events. The city does not and will not regulate the content of events. We regulate it based on public safety and the needs to create any problems with the city. We do not regulate the content. We cannot regulate the content. I guess if you wanted to, you could, but staff would do it and run yourself a loss. So we will not regulate the content. But it is BMD's event. They can whoever they want to send you this or whatever. And so we will monitor that. They want that. We will issues they have. We take care of the local safety standards. So I'm going to do that.
Okay. With that, then I guess we don't have a city. Oh.
Tonight, we go to the extreme. And fire, the fire chief issued the night tonight. We will be to the extreme category.
Okay, and I do remember what I was going to say is Councilor Souls will be here on the radio with me on Friday, so we'll see you at KND. And with that, we are adjourned.